Here's one of my favorite quotes. It's by the late, great Jim Rohn. He says, "It isn't the blowing of the wind. It's the setting of the sails that determine where we end up in life. That determines our success." The wind is a metaphor for change, disruption. And all of us are no strangers to change. Those of us who have been through medical challenges, nasty surprises about finances, careers. For me, I woke up one morning to be told I was losing 30% of my team to a restructure. And for 2 years, I struggled to get out of bed most days. I lost my energy and passion and drive. But in those 2 years, I learned about the importance of emotional intelligence, the importance of managing energy. We can't control the situation around us, but only we can decide our emotional response. And our emotional response drives our action response. And the action response drives the results that we get. And you know what? We are going through COVID-19, a huge change in our life, a huge disruption, something that we've never ever experienced for many of us. Imagine if through that experience, you could largely experience gratitude, inspiration, and courage. How would life be? Let's play a game of Know Your Celebrity. So I want you to imagine you were born with no hands and no legs. I want you to imagine you had great parents. There was no medical reason why you were born that way. You know, your mother is a nurse and she took all the necessary precautions. Your parents were determined to give you a normal upbringing, send you to school just like any other kid. Imagine going to school, kids looked at you in shock and horror. They were afraid of you. They pelted you with stones. Each and every day you prayed for hands and legs. No hands and legs. You decide, what's the point of life? And imagine today, this is a person who is a best-selling author and inspirational speaker. His books and talks have touched millions of lives. And in spite of having no limbs, he plays golf, swims, and generally lives a life of no limits. Who am I? Who is this celebrity? Nick Vujicic, yes! Okay, here's Know Your Celebrity number 2. Born to unmarried parents who separated soon after she was born, left her in the care of maternal grandmother on the farm. The poor urban lifestyle she spent many of her growing up years in had a negative effect on her life as a young teenager. The problems were compounded by repeated sexual abuse, starting at age 9 by men that others in my family trusted. Today, she's one of the wealthiest women in America. A philanthropist, the highest paid entertainer in the world. She has been voted one of the most influential women on the planet for many years. Who am I? Oprah Winfrey. Okay, how about this one here? He was a teacher in the small town of Seremban, Malaysia, dropped out of school after his O-levels, that's year 10 in Australia, to complete a teaching diploma. Without a degree, his highest monthly wage was a modest 1,000 ringgit. That's 350 Aussie per month. Both he and his wife dreamt of sending their 4 sons to Australia to get a university degree so that they could have opportunities they never had. It was their Everest. By 1998, he had realized that dream. All 4 sons were in Australia, except that one had to return home. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia after a mental breakdown. Gregory came home without completing his studies, and with his erratic behavior, he could not hold down a job. Imagine you're at the cusp of retirement, thinking that your job's done, and now you have a child who's come home. No support, no understanding, very ignorant people around at that time about mental health, no support whatsoever. And for many years, they struggled often under the harsh judgment of others. 10 years into this, he found himself in hospital with severe abdominal pains, underwent surgery, having signed papers acknowledging he might not come out of that episode alive. He was most worried about his son and his wife at that time and how they would cope if he went. He survived that. When he left the hospital, he decided that if he could not help his son, he would do his best to help other carers. He set up the first mental health support group in his hometown of Seremban. In 2009, he helped organize the first Mental Health Awareness Week in Malaysia. His second son gave a talk on resilience that day to a group of carers and their families. It was one of his life's proudest moments, but his son invited his brother Gregory to the stage, who shared with others his message of hope and inspiration. Who's this man? It's my dad. So what do all three of these wonderful people have in common? Because for many years now, during my darkest hours, one of the best habits I've learned is model, stand on the shoulders of giants. You know, in this world, about 95% of people in the Western economies, in the wealthier countries, even Singapore, they're not worrying about having to pay the bills, and yet we're not as happy as ever, right? They're not as resilient as they could be. Their lives are filled with anxiety and worry and dread, and worry and anxiety and fear are very common emotions. We all know that. You know, we're just human after all. And yet, there's a small select group of people that seem to live life to the fullest, no matter what. How exactly do they deal with adversity in life? What are the traits these people have in common? These three stories, similarly from all different parts of the world, slightly different backgrounds. What do each of them have in common? Optimism, positivity, resilience. Yes, I'm getting right back up every time. And what are the things? Many things. Certainly a vision, a passion, a dream, the ability to make it happen. And certainly one of the traits I would say is optimism. And what's optimism? They have this mental attitude, the way of thinking, reflecting a belief. Belief is a thought that the outcome of some specific endeavor or outcomes in general will be positive. For them, it doesn't matter what the situation is. They understand and appreciate that things happen for them, for their favor. It may not be evident at that moment. It may not feel great at that moment, but they fill their lives with hope and optimism that it will be great. So the belief that things happen for them, not to them. If there's one thing I'd love for you to take away from this session, understand, how could COVID-19, this situation that you're in, and other situations that you're in right now, disruption and change, how could it be a situation that perhaps may not be evident now, works for you, right? What benefit could you get out of that? What are the opportunities presented? Because truth be told, before 2001, I was having a decent career, not a great one, not an extraordinary one. And it was the wake-up call I needed, because all of you, my dear brothers and sisters, you are meant to live extraordinary, to experience extraordinary in this lifetime.